no, what's his name? My memory of names is very, very poor. In any case, he was a guard in Auschwitz. And only now they discovered him, he went to America, it was discovered, it came here, etc. The problem is, and this is an interesting legal problem, how the German legal awareness has changed. Most of this, the Auschwitz trial was 1962. There was a very good lawyer, as an attorney, who started this whole thing. His name was and he started the Auschwitz, he put these people on trial. Now, the legal system, and this should be actually in every civilized country, says you cannot condemn somebody if you don't have proof. How can you prove that of, let's say, against 6 million, and you've been one of the people who have been organizing this, that you personally, and that's you have to prove personally that you killed a person. And on that basis, they were all set free. There's a Beihilfe zum Mord, that means helping murder, helping, whatever the term is in English. But you could not prove to anybody, whether it's Eichmann or anybody else, you couldn't prove that they have personally killed somebody. And if you can't prove that they personally killed somebody, what can you do? Yeah. We know you're guilty, you could have, but what can we do? You let you go. The last one of those was condemned last year, or a year and a half ago, and he died just before the sentence was made. But in these now 40 years, the consciousness, the overall consciousness has changed. What was possible in 1952 to say no guilt without proof, individual proof, is not anymore acceptable. And now we say anybody who has been there must have seen and has been a helper in that murder. And on the basis of that, people have, the last one has been condemned, but he died, fortunately for him, just before the sentence was effective. But again, these people are still, there's one more, they say there's one more guard who's still alive, he's 92 years old, and they now try to put him on trial. What do you do with these sort of mental cripples?
Too late.
It's too late. Except for the victims or the relatives of the victims. It's good to know that somehow justice has been done. And while they're being happy, and already Friedke was treated too bad. He had house arrest in Rome. He was not allowed to leave, but he was not in a cell or anything. He had maybe a good life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. I would like you to tell me what do you feel when you watch films about the Second World War or the period that you like? Do you think that they are realist or?
Which films are you talking about?
For example, if you watch on TV a film that is about the Second World War or the Nazi period or something, do you think that they are realistic?
Well, right now it's not anymore a time where many films are made on the Second World War. That period is over. That was in the 50s and 60s and 70s, yes. But it's not anymore topical that people go to see these films. And then there is, anyway, to say right or wrong, this is hard to say what is right or what is wrong. I mean, there are sometimes, there was one, I don't watch television, but there was a television film that was just repeated a few days ago about a normal German soldier and his experience. It's a fictional film, but they showed really how the atmosphere and the climate of the early 40s. And in Poland, and they took most of it took take place in Poland, and that created some controversy because they showed that the Poles did not have all that much of a whitewashed vest, because they also helped a little bit the Germans to get rid of the Jews. That's a taboo that you're not allowed to say, because you certainly find also quite a few Poles who have helped Jews. But there are also anti-Semitism in Poland is still very much alive. And in that film they talked about it, and then the Poles were up in arms. How dare you? This is anti-Polish propaganda. But I think the films that you're talking about are mostly today's of documentaries, and some documentaries are good and educational, but fiction films, there are few that I know of. In the 50s it was even so that they would make films about German generals, Rommel, the German army man, the English did a film on Rommel, Desert Fox, and heroized him. That was 1955 or 6 or something like that. That you wouldn't dare to do anymore, but it helped to those Germans who said we weren't all that bad. And the English make even a film about our Rommel, etc., who had a very sort of strange or tragic history. Does the name Rommel mean anything? It doesn't have to. But he was a very popular general, the most popular German general. And he fought in Northern Africa, the African warfare, etc. And he was on the margin involved with the 20th of July, the attack, the attentat for Hitler, right? 20th of July 44. And they caught most of them, etc., and hanged them. And then the documents show that Rommel, the most popular general, was also in this anti-Hitler conspiracy. So what do you do if you were a Nazi? What would you do in that case? You couldn't come up with this. But they realized we cannot put him on trial. That is too devastating. If the famous Rommel had been also in the anti-Hitler plot, that the regime could not tolerate. So what they do is, they went to Rommel and said, look, you have two choices. One is, okay, we put you on trial. That means also you have what you call Sippenhaft, that means the tribal responsibility. That means husband, or wife and children will also be put in concentration camps, right? Taking out, traitor to the fatherland, etc. So wife and children in concentration camp. That's one option. The other option is that you commit suicide. And Rommel was too much of a coward to say, I take that risk and go on trial and say what I believe in. Hitler is criminal, what we are doing here. But he was too much of a coward. So they let him commit suicide. Two officers, there's a film, in a film, they did a film about him. There, the two officers came, he had been in an airplane accident. He was wounded. He was wounded, and so there was a good pretext. And so they took him into a car, told him, gave him poison. The car left, drove around for an hour, etc. And he took his poison, and they brought him back. Said, too bad, the field marshal had another attack and died. And then he got a fantastic funeral, with a Nazi flag and flowers at a gigantic funeral. I mean, how phony can you get?
So he was, I'm sorry, he was a Nazi who was anti-Hitler.
He was an anti-Hitler general.
Nazi.
No, he was not a Nazi really. He was a professional soldier. And this professional soldier, his first job is to win the war, or a battle or something. And he was not involved, he did not kill prisoners or something. He did not commit any war crimes. So everybody agreed, not that I'm an expert, but what I read, that he was a very qualified military officer. Why not? It's a job. I'm anti-military, I'm a pacifist, but I have to respect that some people are officers and there's a professional.
Exactly.
And he was a professional.
Exactly.
But that thing, that they knew, the inner circle knew that he did not die a normal death, but commit suicide. Then to have that whole funeral thing there, mamma mia.
So we know that you have wrote a book, and I would like to know, how did you decide to write that book? What did you think, and you think that I'm going to write a book? Why what? How?
It's a question that is not easy to answer. I enjoy writing it. I'm old enough to enjoy looking back at my biography and to see what was there. This book is, what I'm happy about this book, I call it Threads of Life. A thread is of life. And the subtitle is 10 autobiographical essays. So I wrote 10 autobiographies. And 10 autobiographies and each one has a topic. So my first chapter is called War. Because my earliest memory go back to 1938. And when a Swedish submarine arrived in Rostock and was going there to watch and see war was somehow in the background. Half a year later the war was there. So my first 10 years, the one that I talked about, were filled up with war experience. But not only these 10 years, war was for me a main topic in my whole life. I became a political scientist. In political science, I became interested very much in war and violence. Where does violence come from? Peace research is one of my academic qualifications. And partly it sounds a little bit pretentious, but I'm one of the fathers of German peace research. That was my first claim to fame, so to speak. And so I have a whole chapter only on how, from a war child to a peace research activist and a pacifist, I'm a pacifist. That's one topic, Another topic is universities, how university education, how did I experience my education in the war, what was when I started to study in 1954, the universities hardly functioned. They began to function. It was all a new experience. So I described of how I became an academic, studying in Germany, studying in Japan, in America. I have very strong relations to America. So my life as a peace, because most people who know me as a peace research expert. Or then I have very strong roots with America, or relationship to America. My parents had been in America, they knew about America. My father had been once to America. And then after the war, or after my studies, I thought I should also go to America and study there. Political science was was a specialization that was very in demand. Very few people knew what is political science and what political science is all about. So I went to America and I stayed 3 years there. And when I came back, I became right away involved in peace research and in, how do you say that, I became an Americanist, i.e. that had a chair in international relations and in American politics. So American politics was one of my fields, and I wrote many things about American politics. So I was another thread is an Americanist. Or I love the theater. and I always wanted to become a theater director, which didn't work out. But as a kid, already when I was still in school, I always went to the theater. So I wrote a whole chapter on my theatrical experience of what plays would one see in 1950, 55 or so, and who were the great actors and why, and the topics that were presented on stage. So theater is another topic. Or, for me, very important is Italy. And I start also with the question, you can ask yourself that question also, when did you for the first time hear about other countries? That there is something like another country which speaks a different language, and it's Germany. Try to, when does that come into your subconscious that there is a Germany or in England or France, whatever, and I can reconstruct that for myself. When did I know what is Italy? It didn't mean anything to you, but in 1938, it was the last maneuvers, the military maneuvers. They were done in northern Germany. Maneuvers out of the normal military activities. And there was a train coming there because Hitler and Mussolini joined of that show of the maneuvers. And I remember we went there at the periphery of that town, Rostock, and all of a sudden the train came, and here was Hitler and there was Mussolini. So I saw my Führer, but I didn't see Mussolini. My brother saw Mussolini, and he didn't see Hitler. But I was 5 years old. But what was important is there I heard about Italy. Mussolini in Italian. What is an Italian? Speaks a different language. See? Then a few weeks later, Italy joined the war against Germany. At first they were allies, right? Then they joined them. And we sang them stupid songs about the Italians. I didn't know what that means. Badoglio Italiana. Now I know. But then we were singing anti-Italian songs because Italians were considered traitors. Poor soldiers and traitors. And so, therefore, Italy became part of my inner household, so to speak. And then years later, for reasons which I don't have to bother you with, I wound up in Italy with my family, and we stayed for altogether 15 years in Italy. And I went to the university there. I was teaching there, and my children are basically Italians. They grew up there, and still speak better Italian than German, much to my annoyance. But they get along very well. Anyway, so the history. My history with Italy is a 15 years old history, and for example, I learned through Italy. I got to know my own country, Germany, in the sense that once this gets too long, you have to stop me. But, is that what's to say in the Italiener? The Italians of national anthem is Avanti Popolo alla riscossa bandiera rossa. The partisans song, and that was in the piazza every whatever month is a big manifestation, and one would sing then Bandiera Rossa. And there I learned about the Italian resistenza, Widerstand, opposition, the anti-fascist opposition, and we were all anti-fascist, and Italy was officially called, or unofficially called, La Repubblica nata dalla Resistenza. The republic that was born out of the resistance. And I always felt bad, had a bad conscience. We had the poor 20th of July, a small little thing, and didn't get anywhere, and the Germans didn't have a real resistance. Until one day I was invited by the Goethe Institute of Palermo, for all purposes, I don't know why, and they said, we would like you to give a talk on the German resistance. And I didn't know anything. Well, I was already by then sort of 25 years old. I should have known something, but I knew very little. Never bothered to research. So they asked me to give this talk about the German resistance. And when I studied that, and my eyes dropped out, so to speak. I said, what? There was such a resistance in Germany, but nobody talks about it. Because the prominent people are the Friends of today or the White Rose, for example. That everybody knew. No? But the fact that there was every 60th German was for short or longer time in a concentration camp. That one should keep in mind. The concentration camps were not just to gas Jews. They were invented as political prisons. You know? And if you didn't behave properly, you were taken into a concentration camp.
We were today at one prison of political.
What?
Today we were at one prison of political people.
Oh dear. Stasi. The Stasi prison.
Yeah. Well, that's
the other part.
But in any case, all of a sudden I realized there was an enormous resistance in Germany, much stronger than in Italy. In Italy, if you said something critical about fascism or about the war, they grabbed you and give you either maybe 2 or 3 years in prison, or in Italy they sent them into the periphery and in exile. You go to the south of Italy and then shut up there and you're out of it. In Germany, the same thing. You lost your head. And the numbers that I have, and there in my book I quote that that chapter on Nazism, are so horrendous. The Italians they executed they put on trial about 20 or so political people, anti-fascists. Out of these 25 or so, 12 were executed. 12 call this political murder. In Germany, in that over 22 years of Italian fascism, in Germany, in the 12 years, we had 125,000 people being murdered. Because there, if you just said something wrong, you were taken, and people were so intimidated that to be there in resistance or to actively take an anti-fascist position, nobody bothered, so to speak. But in Germany, your head was off. And therefore, in Germany, they were scared. And how can you not? Nobody is a hero, or very few people are heroes. And so, I compared these figures there, and I must say, from then on, I became a German patriot. I said, we did our resistance, and I'm proud of that. And that's why I'm also happy that we have now not only for the Holocaust, but that we have other monuments also.
Sure.
And one should not forget that. Go, you find your way?
No, I'm just going to make a comment.
What?